At family dinner, my son had the nerve to yell right in my face, "You're just a freeloader." He actually said this while living entirely rent-free in my house. Without missing a beat, I looked him dead in the eye and, with all the calm in the world, replied, "You have 24 hours to get out." The words dropped onto the dining table like a glass shattering against a hardwood floor. The room fell dead silent. My daughter-in-law, Sloane, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth, her smug little smile instantly vanishing. Across the table, my 8-year-old grandson, Hudson, dropped his gaze to his plate. Seeing the confusion and sadness on that little boy's face was the only thing that hurt. But it was also exactly what gave me the ultimate strength to follow through. They had been living under my roof for 2 years. Garrett had made some terrible financial decisions that cost him his apartment. And like any 65-year-old widow, I opened my doors with no questions asked. I, Joanne Mercer, paid the electric bill, the water, the high-speed fiber internet they absolutely needed for streaming. And I stocked the pantry with the pricey organic groceries from Whole Foods that Sloane deemed strictly necessary. In exchange, all I expected was a little respect. But gratitude has a very short shelf life when you're living with people who confuse support with obligation. Little by little, they started treating me like a ghost in my own hallways, like a live-in maid who was also financing their lifestyle. Garrett let out a nervous laugh, trying to cut the tension. "Mom, don't be dramatic. I'm just saying you should help out with Hudson more instead of messing around in your garden all day. We actually work." I stood up slowly, clearing my plate and my grandson's, since he was already finished. 24 hours? Garrett, I repeated, never raising my voice, as I walked over to the sink. "Tomorrow, at this exact time, I want your things out of my house." They thought it was just an older woman throwing a tantrum. They figured I'd sleep on it and take it all back by morning. They were dead wrong. The next morning, the smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen. Garrett and Sloane came downstairs acting as if the night before had never even happened. It's fascinating how manipulative people try to erase your boundaries simply by ignoring them. Sloane poured herself a cup, leaned against the granite island I had picked out and paid 15 grand for a decade ago, and sighed, complaining about the weather. I didn't say a single word. I just sat in my usual nook, tapping away on my iPad. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for basic human decency. Words were useless in this house. So I skipped straight to action. I opened my banking app. With 3 quick taps, I canceled the authorized credit card in my son's name. Next, I logged into my utilities portal and axed the premium streaming subscriptions they binged daily. Finally, I opened my Geeko app, started a chat with an agent, and permanently removed Garrett as an authorized driver on my SUV. I did it all in under 10 minutes, casually sipping my chamomile tea. "Mom, are you doing a grocery run today?" Garrett asked, adjusting his tie. "We're out of almond milk, and Sloane wants salmon for dinner tonight." I looked up from my screen, locked the iPad, and set it on the table. "No," Sloane frowned. "No, Joanne. You know I don't have time to hit Trader Joe's today." "Then I guess you're eating out," I replied, standing up to rinse my mug. "You have 20 hours left. I highly suggest you start packing instead of daydreaming about salmon." They exchanged a mocking look. They still hadn't grasped that the tap on my patience and my wallet had been shut off entirely. They were about to discover that my silence wasn't submission. It was preparation. Garrett gave Sloane a rushed kiss goodbye and walked over to the entryway console, reaching out for the brass hook where he always left the keys to my SUV. His hand grasped at empty air, He stopped dead in his tracks, confused, and started rummaging through the mail and pulling open drawers. I watched the entire scene unfold from the hallway while watering a small potted fern. "Mom, where are the keys to the Tahoe?" he asked, using that demanding tone I had grown to despise. "I'm running late for the office." "In my pocket," I answered, lightly shaking the last drops of water from my metal watering can. "Give them to me. I'm in a rush." "No. You're no longer on my insurance, and I'm not risking my vehicle. The crosstown bus stops at the corner every 15 minutes. Garrett's face instantly flushed red. The mask of the easygoing son completely fell away. "Are you serious right now? That's my ride to work. I'm your son." "You're a 35-year-old man who sold his own car to pay off DraftKings gambling debts," I reminded him, keeping my voice perfectly level. "And I am the owner of that SUV. 18 hours. Hearing the commotion, Sloan marched out of the kitchen, arms crossed, giving me that calculating up and down look she always used to make me feel small. "Joanne, this is absolutely ridiculous. You're throwing a childish tantrum. Just give him the keys. He can't be late because of your little mood swings." I didn't even bother acknowledging her. I just turned on my heel, walked into my study, and locked the door behind me. I heard Garrett swearing under his breath, right before the front door slammed violently shut. I had begun reclaiming my territory. But the real test would come at noon, when Sloan inevitably tried to commandeer the spaces she felt entitled to. At noon, the quiet of the house broke when Sloan returned from her yoga class with 2 of her friends in tow. This was one of her favorite tactics, bringing guests over unannounced to take over the living room, effectively forcing me to hide in my bedroom so I wouldn't be in the way. From my study, I could hear their exaggerated, shrill laughter. Then, the sound of Sloane's heels clicking toward the kitchen. I waited. 3, 2, 1. "Joanne." Her sharp voice echoed down the hall. I stepped out of my study, walking at a relaxed pace. Sloan was standing in front of the kitchen's walk-in pantry. The double doors were thrown wide open, revealing completely bare shelves. Not a single trace of the imported wines, the aged cheeses, or the gourmet snacks I regularly bought with my retirement funds. "Where is all the food?" she demanded, completely ignoring the fact that her friends were watching awkwardly from the living room. "I was going to make a charcuterie board. The groceries that I paid for are locked securely in my private quarters," I informed her, leaning casually against the doorframe. "You both have incomes. If you want to host your friends, you are more than welcome to order DoorDash and pay for it yourself." Sloane's friends exchanged highly uncomfortable glances and immediately started gathering their designer bags, muttering awkward excuses about having other errands to run. Sloane's hands balled into fists. Her face went completely pale from the humiliation. "You're embarrassing me on purpose. You are incredibly selfish." "Selfish is insulting the homeowner while you eat her food," I reminded her, without an ounce of remorse. "You have 15 hours. Use the afternoon to track down some moving boxes." Sloan whipped out her phone to call Garrett, desperate for her defender, completely unaware of the nasty surprise he was dealing with across town at that very moment. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone started vibrating on the kitchen counter. It was Garrett. I let it ring 3 full times before answering. "What the hell did you do to the card?" he spat, skipping the greeting entirely. I could hear clinking glasses and loud chatter in the background, a restaurant. "I'm taking clients out for a $200 lunch and the waiter just told me the card declined. You're making me look like an absolute idiot." That is my credit card, tied to my bank account, I replied, my calm demeanor clashing entirely with his hysteria. I canceled it this morning. From now on, your expenses are on you. You can't just do this out of nowhere. I don't have any cash on me. Figure it out. You're a businessman, I said. And without waiting for another word, I hung up. I switched off my phone and headed out to the garage. Over the last few months, I had been breaking down and hoarding cardboard boxes from my Amazon deliveries. I pulled them out, patiently taped them back together with heavy-duty packing tape, and carried them inside, one by one. I lined them up in the upstairs hallway, right outside their bedroom door. I didn't leave 5 or 10. I stacked 20 neatly aligned boxes. It was a visual message that was impossible to ignore. I wasn't going to pack a single sock for them that would be crossing a line of effort they absolutely didn't deserve. But I was handing them the tools for their exit. Seeing those empty cardboard boxes piled up outside their door was exactly the reality check they needed. The clock was ticking. 12 hours left. And their stubborn denial was rapidly curdling into sheer panic. At 6 o'clock, the front door flew open. Garrett and Sloan walked in together, their faces pale, tight, and exhausted. They spotted the mountain of boxes in the upstairs hallway and froze. This time, there were no sarcastic remarks or condescending laughs. They found me sitting at the dining room table, wearing my reading glasses and deep into a novel. Garrett marched over, planting both hands heavily on the table, trying to use his height to intimidate me. Enough of this game, Mom. You've punished us. You've humiliated us. You cut off the cards. You took the food. Now get rid of those boxes. This is my house, too. I grew up here. I closed my book, took off my glasses, and opened a manila folder I had resting beside me. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the polished wood until it was sitting right under his nose. Read it, I ordered. He looked down. Sloan leaned in from behind to read over his shoulder. It was the deed to the property. I raised a single finger and tapped a specific line. Owner Joanne Mercer. Widow. Sole owner. I looked them both dead in the eye. You didn't grow up here, Garrett. Your father and I bought this place in the suburbs 10 years ago, when you were already a grown man. I paid off the mortgage myself, with my own hard-earned money after he passed away. You two are temporary guests who entirely forgot your manners. I'm your own flesh and blood, he mumbled, all the bravado draining from his voice. You can't throw your own flesh and blood out onto the street. My flesh and blood doesn't look at me and call me a freeloader under the roof that shelters him for free, I said, sliding the deed back into its folder. This isn't a negotiation. Pack. They thought their trump card would be emotional manipulation. They were about to use the one person we all knew I loved without condition. But I was already a step ahead of them. You're going to make your own grandson homeless, Sloan hissed, crossing her arms, her eyes flashing with a toxic mix of fury and desperate triumph. You're so cold-hearted that you don't even care what happens to Hudson. What are you going to tell him, that his own grandmother kicked him to the curb? Right on cue. I heard small footsteps on the stairs. Hudson had crept down after hearing the raised voices. He was clutching his stuffed bear tight to his chest, looking at us with wide, terrified eyes. I didn't let Sloan say another word to poison him. I got up, walked straight to the stairs, and dropped to my knees so I was right at his eye level. Hudson, look at me, I said, my voice incredibly gentle but firm. This house will always always be a safe place for you. You have your very own room right up there, and you can come stay with me whenever you want. I love you to the moon and back." The boy nodded slowly, the tension dropping from his little shoulders. "But your mom and dad need to learn how to take care of themselves in their own space," I continued, brushing a piece of hair from his forehead. "Adults need rules sometimes, just like kids do. This is not your fault, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Do you understand?" He threw his little arms around my neck. "Okay, Grandma." I stood back up, holding his small hand, and turned to face Sloane and Garrett. Their faces were an absolute portrait of defeat. They had tried to use my grandson as a human shield, and I had effortlessly disarmed them by simply telling him the truth, without any of the toxic drama. 9 hours, I announced, guiding Hudson into the kitchen to make him some macaroni and cheese. Leaving his parents standing alone in the hallway with 20 empty boxes, the rest of the night was scored by the harsh ripping of packing tape and dresser drawers being yanked open. The clock struck 8 the next morning. It was time for the final blow they never saw coming. At exactly 8 a.m., the doorbell echoed through the house. Garrett, standing in the hallway in his sweatpants while dragging a half-zipped suitcase, stared at the front entryway in utter confusion. I was the one who opened the door. A man in a branded work shirt stood on the porch, holding a heavy toolbox. "Good morning, Mrs. Mercer. I'm the locksmith you called yesterday afternoon," he said cheerfully, tipping his baseball cap. "Come right in. We'll start with the front door, and then we'll move on to the garage access," I told him. Stepping aside, Garrett dropped the handle of his suitcase. The hard plastic smacked loudly against the floorboards. Sloane stumbled out of their bedroom, looking completely disheveled, her arms full of clothes still on their hangers. "What the hell are you doing?" my son asked, his voice genuinely shaking for the first time. "We're still moving our stuff, and you are welcome to keep moving it. But at 10 o'clock sharp, the new locks will be fully installed," I explained smoothly, watching the locksmith pull a heavy-duty drill from his kit. "After that, anything left inside will be boxed up and donated to Goodwill." Sloane dropped the clothes. "You're insane. We need more time. We haven't even secured an apartment yet. We just booked a room at the Marriott for a few days. That sounds like a logistics problem you'll have to solve on your own." My timeline was crystal clear. The high-pitched whine of the electric drill tearing through the old deadbolt was the best response I could have possibly given them. That mechanical, grinding noise absolutely shredded their final hope that I was bluffing or that I'd cave at the very last second. A physical barrier was quite literally being built right in front of their eyes. Time was officially up. Pure panic is a spectacular motivator. For the next 2 hours, the house was a whirlwind of frantic, desperate activity. Garrett and Sloane finally stopped whining and resorted to shoving their belongings into heavy black trash bags once they ran out of cardboard boxes. I made myself a double espresso and sat in the living room armchair, watching the chaos unfold with a deep, settling peace I had completely forgotten I was capable of feeling. I didn't yell. I didn't hurl insults. I just listened to the sound of zippers being forced shut and suitcases constantly rolling out the door and into the trunk of their rental car. They tried shooting me resentful glances, playing the silent victims, praying that the guilt would eat me alive as I watched them pack up their entire lives. But I felt absolutely zero guilt. Honestly, it felt like I was finally shedding a heavy, soaking wet winter coat I had been forced to wear for 2 years. Hudson came downstairs with his blue school backpack. I knelt down to say goodbye. "Remember what I told you? Sweetie, your room is still yours. I'll pick you up on Saturday and we'll go to the park. I kissed his forehead. Garrett walked over, grabbed the boy's hand, and glared at me with pure resentment. I hope you're happy. Mom, you're destroying your family. No, Garrett, I replied, taking a slow sip of my coffee. I'm saving what's left of myself. Have a safe trip. There were no dramatic, tearful goodbyes, no last-minute apologies. They walked out the front door, and the locksmith who had been waiting patiently in his van stepped right back up to finish installing the final deadbolt. When that heavy front door shut behind them with a firm, brand-new metallic click, the entire energy of the house changed instantly. It's been a month since that morning. The house physically breathes differently now. The hallways aren't thick with walking on eggshells tension, and no one expects me to twist my routine to accommodate their entitled whims. I got my kitchen back. I got my time back. I got my finances back. Without the roughly $1,500 a month financial deadweight of carrying two fully functional adults, I realized my retirement savings are more than enough to live incredibly comfortably. I hired a landscaping crew to handle the heavy yard work, and I finally signed up for those watercolor classes Sloan always sneered at as a waste of time for old ladies. My relationship with my son changed drastically. At first, he tried to punish me with the silent treatment, assuming I'd eventually break and beg to see my grandson. But when he realized I wasn't going to negotiate with emotional terrorists, he had no choice but to adapt. Now, he drops Hudson off on the weekends. He stands on the porch, gives me a stiff but polite greeting, and leaves. Hudson runs wild through the house, eats the snacks I buy just for him, and tells me all about his week at school. When he's here, I'm just grandma. No yelling, no secret debts, no heavy sighs. I learned the incredibly hard way that family is not a blank check for abuse. A mother's love does not mean turning yourself into the doormat where your grown children get to wipe their frustrations. Setting hard boundaries didn't make me the villain of this story. It handed me back the dignity they tried so hard to strip away. Every night, I lock my door with my brand new key, and for the first time in years, I sleep completely soundly, knowing my peace belongs entirely to me. Through all of this, I realized that endless, bleeding heart sacrifice isn't a requirement for being a good mother. Sometimes, out of sheer terror of breaking up the family, we quietly allow other people to completely break our own spirit. I understand now that putting your foot down isn't selfish, and it isn't revenge. It is pure emotional survival. Unconditional love should never be confused with tolerating disrespect. Loving your family also means having the backbone to step away and let them face the music of their own choices. Ultimately, protecting my space, my sanity, and my self-worth didn't destroy my family. It just exposed the harsh reality we all desperately needed to face so we could finally start treating each other with genuine respect.